UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasion, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Well, welcome, greatest audience on the planet, to UAP Crossfire on KGR Radio, KGR Radio DB. My co-host, Chris DiPerno. We are missing the silverback of ufology, Mr. Decker, because Vicky, his lovely wife, is not feeling well tonight, and he's attending to her and giving her good care. So we send a lot of prayers, love, and good thoughts out there that they're taking care of it, and that Decker is able to bring her back. As you all know, those two formed UFO Magazine in the late 90s. Vicky was the founder, and her soon-to-be husband, when they had met, Don Ecker, was the chief investigator. So we owe them both a lot, and I'm sorry that Decker can't make the show tonight, but I'm more concerned that Vicky gets a quick heal and she's back on the pins, because I would imagine living with Decker full time, you need to be full up round to keep up with that capability there. What do you think, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. The silverback, he's a handful.
I would think so. I would think so. I mean, my wife
send our prayers out to Vicky. Yep. She's a great lady, and we hope she gets well soon.
Yes, absolutely. And as always, I'll bring the end of my normal ending of the show up early. God's peace that surpasses all knowledge and understanding. My eternal wish to everyone that tunes into the show. And overall, we have a really interesting guest tonight. I'm very happy to introduce and bring him up tonight. But before we start that, I just want to make a quick comment. Last night on Twitter, Darcy Weir and Andy Marcial had their show. From what I understand, it went well. I could only get parts of it because of some conflicts I had here to really jump in to listen. And I'm really happy that they have joined the team here. I think they're going to be a really interesting and really powerful show. I enjoyed having them on the show a couple of weeks ago. I think the work that they are both doing and the way they team up, the chemistry is pretty exciting. Chris, what do you think?
Well, first of all, Darcy's a world of knowledge. He does great documentary, folks. He's the kind of person that you can take what he says to the bank. He does his homework. He's really thorough. And, he's the kind of guy that really vests himself into finding out what the truth is before he puts it out on the air. And I like him that way because he's challenging, and he can take the hardball questions. That's what I liked when we had him on our show. He was not lax in taking hardball questions.
Well, the other part is that he is extremely well read, learned in the history. I mean, he knows and has studied a lot about the work that Don and Vicky did, and that showed. So I think it's a really exciting turn for KGRA and the listeners of KGRA to have them join it, because I think they bring, of course, everybody's younger than us, but it's nice to see young folks with energy and a slightly different tact driving at the same target. So I really am happy to see it, and congratulations to them. Glad that we had them on at the start of this process. Well, tonight, as always, as you see up there, you can get to me, Commander Cobra, kgradb@gmail.com. I try to check during the show, and I will try to check during the show. Plus, I always read the comments. I'm still on some kind of waivers with Bill Skywatcher that I don't actually always get a connection that allows me to answer comments in the comment room, but I try to bring them up as I read them during the show. So communicate to us that way. I do get a number of folks that communicate with me after the show or when they hear the show on a replay or a cast playing of it. Please feel free to any comments or questions or remarks, or a number of folks have suggested some folks to go after as a guest to bring in. So glad to do that. And I always pass questions off to Chris and Don Ecker if you can't get to them directly. So a few weeks back, I was reading Stan Gordon's newsletter. As everyone knows, I'm a big fan, and I consider Stan a good friend. I had him as a guest a number of times on my old show. I talk to him almost every time I transit Pennsylvania because of my work. I normally fly or drive myself, or fly myself to points out west for my day job. And I will be doing that in the middle of October. I'll be off the show for a little bit while I make that transit. And I usually check in with Stan and ask him where the activity is, because there's just a huge amount of activity in Pennsylvania, especially from the central part of the state going west to the western boundary, western border. So I flew and worked through there for years before I knew Stan or knew about the activity there. And he has a fantastic network. Well, he featured our guest. Let's bring him on in, Mr. J.W. Brown, Jim Brown. Jim will be only using an icon folk tonight. He's on the phone. He's on the phone with us, thanks to the offices of Miss Shore Skywatcher. We were to get Jim. Good evening, Jim, and welcome to UAP Crossfire on KGR Radio.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, for Jim, he gets published in Stan's newsletter, and then he gets an email from me. Jim, I read this latest investigation you did on a recent UAP event that occurred in Pennsylvania. And the next thing you know, after we have a couple conversations by email, I've got him convinced to take a call, and we do. And, well, we roped him in for the show tonight. And it's been kind of fun over the last 10 days, 2 weeks, talking with him on and off and getting him set up for that. Jim, why don't we start out with you just give an introduction on yourself, your background. You've been doing this for a bit.
Yeah, I started this back in 1973. I always had an interest in paranormal, UFOs, and so on. And then in 1973, this area we had, nationwide, they had the reports come in from everywhere. But that was one thing. It's growing up back in those days, it like, okay, you read about it in a book, and okay, that happened across the country, and it's something else. But now all of a sudden we're getting reports here. And that's what got me into it, was that now I don't have to read it in a book. People locally were reporting things, and I can actually investigate firsthand. So that's where my interest started. And it went through the 70s, various reports and so on. And then, of course, as I went into it, I started seeing correlations between UFOs, Bigfoot. It seemed like there may be some relation between the two.
Sure.
So I kind of branched out. I started just in the UFO, UAP area. Of course, we were UFOs back then, but then I got to thinking there may be a connection between the two. And now I've come to the conclusion, or not really a conclusion, but my theory is that it's all somewhat related and ties in. So I've had to branch into various aspects of the paranormal, including hauntings and Bigfoot and creatures, whatever.
Right.
I can't really differentiate it. And that's where I stand right now. I do my own investigations. I do have my website out that sort of an educational tool that anyone can use. But,
yeah, and that's Jim, Jim, destinations.com, correct?
JimsDestinations.com.
Yep.
It's cool.
Jims, excuse me, JIMS destinations.com. It's a really interesting website. The way Jim has it configured, it's retro, but it's got some pretty interesting linking into the site. So I urge everyone to take a jump into it and to do that. Jim, before I turn you over to Chris for the opening here, just give me a quick. You have a pretty interesting technical background as well.
Yeah, I'm retired now, but when I was in the field of electronics, I did electronics design and as well as evaluating and test equipment. And from that, I was able to tie that into somewhat as an experimental thing. I get an idea, something like that. We'll try it. It may work, it may not, but
right.
Sort of experimental.
So
branching out into areas not where people normally go with this stuff.
Right. So when you say experimental, try to explain that to the audience a little bit. I have a pretty good understanding from talking with you and some of the stuff that we had looked at together. How
Sure. It'd be
how you
like-
apply that discipline in that a little bit.
Yeah, you have an idea. Say, for instance, you want to investigate the possibility that maybe an EM field's responsible for activity. Well, and then you look around. There's no piece of equipment that does exactly what you do. Well, I can sit down and we can work together. You tell me what you need, and we'll see if we can't develop something that will do and test the theory that you want to put to the test. So that's where it goes. It's
You
sort of
just
like
make me think of Ghostbusters when they
over the counter.
created all the gear for that they used in Ghostbusters.
Pardon?
You made me think of the gear that they created in the movie
Oh.
Ghostbusters. You know that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that you would get involved in unlicensed nuclear backpacks, but all the other stuff. I think you would probably be.
right. It's I'm not going to get into some of that stuff because obviously it's TV. They do.
Yeah.
That stuff's not even feasible. But when I look at some of the stuff that's being used on TV shows now, if we want to get in there, we can. But this stuff, it doesn't work. It can't work. It defies the laws of physics. And we may not know what we're investigating, but we do know what the equipment that we're using is capable of because we designed it.
That's a good point. I'm going to circle back to that later. Hey, Chris, go ahead and jump in.
Jim, thank you. First, thank you for being on the show. I've seen your resume here that you've been doing this since the mid-'70s, and you've been expanding it more and more. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is that in your early days, you started working with first responders and local media. And I wanted to ask you, how is it different with first responders and local media? Now, because I was a police officer, and I was a police officer in the 70s and early 80s and 90s and 2000s. And I could tell you, if I got a call about a UFO back then, I'd start laughing. And I'd actually call the dispatch on a telephone and say, this is a joke, right? And they say, oh, no, somebody wants to see a police officer about there. And we always took it as garbage. And, obviously I've seen transitions, but you as being a paranormal / UFO investigator, what kind of transition do you see that's happening with first responders or the media? The media thought it was a joke in the beginning too.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There is more seriousness to it because there are too many people reporting too many things to just pass it all off. We're going to get our share of crank calls, always have had and always will. But it's like now you make your contacts and to get the name out there. Now, not officially, they can't bring me in officially as as an investigator for them. But when somebody has a problem or something like that they think may fall under the UFO paranormal area, there's no real crime committed, so they can't really prosecute it as any kind of a criminal activity. So they need a way to get rid of it. So it serves both purposes.
All right, let me ask you this because you touched on something there, and that's very interesting, Jim. How did you get to turn the police and the media people to your side of the story? Now, one time when I was a patrolman, we had a call about a UFO sighting, and the lady claims that she was abducted. Of course, we didn't do anything with it. We had no clue what the abduction was or, UFOs or stuff in the sky. We thought it was just, we asked her if she had a doctor that she can go talk to because we thought she was kind of nuts. Obviously that's all changed, but you're talking about back in the 1970s. How were you able to convince these people years ago to work on your side?
It's just a matter of making personal contact was the big thing back then. I knew people directly involved in it there, and you're able to go. Like I said, it's not official, but you get on the list, and they know that they can call, and they trust me. I obviously trust them. It's just a matter of making personal contact and building your contacts in that matter. You can't do this on your own just to go out, and you have to have a group of people working together. It's a team effort, even though I'm an independent investigator, it's still a team effort. Nobody does it all on their own. So it's just a matter of making the contacts, make the connections, get in favorably with them, and then go from there.
Yeah, it was probably a tough thing for you back in the 70s and 80s.
Sure, it was.
I mean, I can imagine you pulled your hair out meeting people like me and trying to explain to them that UFOs are real. You know, I mean, I wouldn't. I'd be honest with you. Back then, I'd laugh and walk away. You know, and say, "Yeah, right, okay, whatever."
That
And
was
do that.
actually one of the selling points of it that made it easier in one regard, because now, if say we use the police department for example, if somebody calls that in, rather than laugh at them and anything, not know what to do with the call, now they have somebody, basically they can pass it off to somebody. We can't do anything about this. You may be silly or whatever, but here's a guy that'll talk to you about it. And my name's out there. They make the call and it goes from there. So it actually serves, it works both ways. It makes it easier for them. It makes it easier for me as well. Gives me the connection, makes it easier for them because they can pass it off where obviously there's no criminal activity or anything involved. That they be involved.
Hold on a second. That you hit an interesting topic, and I want to ask you this before I turn it over to Commander. So, when you started getting abduction cases, people claim that they've been abducted in the middle of the night, taken out of their homes and everything else, which we now see is something very serious because we see people with physical injuries from that. We see people with evidence from that. Back then, when you had that type of thing and they're saying, hey, I was basically kidnapped and assaulted, stuck with needles and everything, how was it then that you handled such a thing? That's pretty dramatic. And back in those times, they had very little support.
Right. It's one of those things that you're absolutely right. They couldn't support it because, and there again, contacts are an important thing because, if I get something like that, I'm not going to take an abduction case, for example. If I got a call for that, I have consultants that I work with we were part of an association. It's kind of breaking up a little bit now. It's just we're all getting too old to do this. But I had a licensed psychologist. Okay, you're gonna talk to him first. He's going to approach it from his angle. We're going to see whether you're on the level before we go too far with it. And a lot of this we could rule out on our own. And of course, then we make the recommendations. We recommend if there's some kind of physical injury, obviously you're going to have medical attention. So I'm not going to attempt to do anything with that. It's going to go to the proper authorities, emergency room or whatever. We're going to get somebody to look at the physical aspect of it first. Then if there's any mental aspect to be considered, psychologists could advise me because, like I say, I'm not in. It's out of my field, in other words. But I still have to have the contacts available to do this.
So Jim,
the other part of it.
Jim, give the audience a little understanding. How'd you connect up with this network? How did you get, caught up with the? It actually built itself. The network was originally formed back in 1984, and it was 8 of us got together, and all of us. The requirements, unlike most paranormal groups, the requirement here is there is no politics involved. It's an association. It's not a group. Right.
Consequently, anyone that was in that had to bring something to the table. In my case, it was electronics and technology. They needed somebody with electronics and technology. They had the psychologists, they had the biologists and all this. We have photographers. I'm not talking professionals now. This is their line of work.
Right.
And consequently, all work together. And if I get a case, any of us can take a case. If somebody contacts me and wants me to investigate something, I'll determine whether I'm interested in taking the case. If I do, then I'm now the lead investigator on that case, but I will bring in any consultants from the association I need based on the case.
And are you guys actively looking to have lineage in the group? Are you going to bring other folks into it, or are you just going to let it?
We're actually on the other end of it. In 2023, we were an official association. We had the bylaws and everything else, but we dissolved the official association in January of 2023, simply because some of us are getting too old. We have guys in there that are in their 80s, and obviously they're not going to go out chasing UFOs or Bigfoot over the mountains and everything else. And I'm getting up there myself.
Sure.
So, it's basically on its way out, you might as well say, but we're still trying to keep it as active as we can.
Do you think there's going to be another self-forming group that's going to follow in your footsteps? Do you think you've inspired, or do you see any kind of indication?
Yeah, we actually did. There are two people been working with us, trying to use us like as a pattern to how to get together. Then they'll set up their own connections and so on and so forth. Just be whatever they want to do. They're just kind of using us as a pattern.
So you guys, do you see yourselves as mentors to this next group that might be coming up? I mean, the activity level where you're all at is extremely high. It does not get a lot of press. And if you don't follow Stan, and now that I know you and check in with you, you are not seeing the level of activity that's there. It's impressive.
Right. This area around Chestnut Ridge. That's where I'm actually. If I look out my back window, it's dark now. When I look out the back window, I'm looking at the base of Chestnut Ridge.
Right.
If you talk to Stan, Chestnut Ridge, that's the hot spot in western Pennsylvania.
Sure is. I used to refuel quite a bit at Arnold Palmer, going west and east. And I told Stan that one day. I'm laughing because he was all excited. He wanted to know if I had seen anything, because there was like 3 reports right along that ridge line, all around the area and down by the highway. Mm-hmm. And I really got frustrated because until very recently, everything I had seen was our gear. Things that, when I was still on active duty, and then when I was working in areas as a flying contractor, I saw, things that were not, I always like to spice it up just a tiny bit by saying, I don't know where the technology may have came from. It could have been reversed engineered from stuff, but the things that I was seeing were sensitive projects, that were developing or working. And Stan knows, I think it's almost a joke now that when I check in with him, I'm just praying, that I'm at the right place, right time. But I'm going to try this on you. I think because I want to, I'm not going to. It's when you're not prepared or not initiated, I think you have a better chance. Does that seem to be your experience?
You never know when it's going to happen. It's like you would expect something to happen and nothing happens. When you're not prepared, if you don't have a camera, that's when something's going to happen. Well, I've been on some of the absolute loneliest, most isolated parts of the globe. Just hasn't rung the bell yet. All right. So you've been doing this for a long time. You are taking a very disciplined approach. We were talking offline leading up to the case that started that connected me up with you. We have a very interesting intersection of UFO, UAP activity, cryptid type things, paranormal type events. Stan has logged this for years. Your record, I guess, goes in with Stan's kind of stats and data collection. Is that correct? That's correct. Yeah, we share back and forth on what's going on. It's not. Unlike so many of the paranormal groups, it's my group's better than your group. That doesn't happen. In serious investigation, we can't have that kind of stuff. Well, I think this belays the kind of geographical qualities or personality I find for folks in Pennsylvania. Don Ecker, originally from Pennsylvania. There tends to be this kind of approach to it. It's interesting because it has, I think, some colonial roots, but there's kind of a unique, no nonsense kind of approach to it. And since I lived and worked all through Western Pennsylvania for about a year and a half into West Virginia on a very interesting project a couple of years back, I really got to know folks there, and it seems to be that kind of approach. Lead us up to the case in question, and Chris will bring some pictures in, and I'll let Chris start some of the questioning. Give us a little lead up to how you got called out for that case. Okay, well, this one was a local witness that experienced it, and there again, he knew that I was investigating this stuff, and was interested in it. And when the event happened, we got lucky in one regard in that he had his phone with him. And he messaged me, and I just happened to be on the computer when this came in. Well, ordinarily, that comes in the messages, and I check my messages periodically. It just so happened I was online at the time, was able to take this right there, consequently, I was able to be on the scene up there within about 20 minutes of the event actually occurring, which is relatively quick response time because it's only about 3 miles from here. But what had happened was I don't know what extent anybody's read this ahead of time, but a little backstory on it. The witness driving down Route 119 headed south.
Excuse me for 1 second, Jim. Chris, if you don't mind, go ahead and bring up that map picture if you can bring that up.
The map? There we go.
While Jim's talking. Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, if you got the map up there, you can see where it was. Well, John's car, he was the first one. He stopped. His car was stalled, I should say. He stopped and drifted off the road. And Joe, who's driving another vehicle behind him, about 1,000 feet behind him, saw him going off the road at the same time his vehicles shut down on him. And he too stopped. Well, to get him off the road and everything, John had a phone laying there on his seat, but the object itself moved off too quick before he could get his phone out. Well, where he was at, his view was obstructed by trees hanging over the highway, but he knew a couple hundred yards down the road he could see a clearing. He's familiar with the area, and he knew there was a clearing down there, so he grabbed the phone, went out, ran down the road to the clearing to try to get a picture of this past where he could get a good view of it, which he did, but by that time the thing had made 2 or 3 jumps, and by then it was almost a mile away, and he took the pictures. I didn't post the pictures because there really isn't any detail to them. It's an elongated black sphere against a white background, but no detail because of the distance. I tried all the enhancements I could do. There just wasn't anything there to bring out. Right. So he went back up, and that's where he called me at this point. Yeah, he took the picture first, and he went back to his vehicle. That's where he called me to wonder whether I had information on it. He wanted to report it, and then he told me the story of it, and I said, just hang on there. I'll be here in about 15 minutes. So I grabbed some stuff together that I have here ready to go, jumped in my truck and headed down there and met him out there on the road.
And the other driver, did the 3 of you link up?
Oh yeah, we talked. Those 2 talked first because when John got back, I didn't tell you there, but when John got back, Joe was still behind there, and they were curious about it. What happened? Did you experience the same thing? Well, Joe came down, was actually standing there by John's vehicle when I got there.
Right.
And they may have exchanged information there, and of course John said that he called. They knew there was an investigator on the way, so Joe hung around at that point, and I was there like say 15 minutes or so, and I was able to interview both of them.
So, just give me a general impression. What was their state of the way they were presenting themselves? Were they alarmed? Were they just excited? Were they worried? Scared? Is that a word?
No, not really scared. A little excited, a little bit worried because now you've got vehicles out there. They shut down, weren't able to start them. So just like anybody, if your car broke down along the road, you're not going to be happy about it. But there was no real abnormal fear or anything like that. It was just the normal that you expect someone to be under those conditions.
Jim, take the audience through the investigation, the kind of questions and the exchange you guys had. Go ahead and just give everybody the opportunity, and if they get to your website, they can read what you had posted. But take us down that lane a little bit.
Yeah, I asked each one. I took them apart to try to split them a little bit so that to keep the testimony independent of each other. I didn't want to color in the other one, so I talked to John. I talked to John first about the thing, and then he gave me his story, which I have posted on there, which he described the object. He described it as just an elongated, dark-colored thing like a pipe. And then Joe come in. He said, "Yeah, it was." He's the one. He brought up the word pipe, and then John told me in a later interview that it was a pipe. Pipe's a good description, but it was slightly flattened. Now, Joe didn't mention flattened. Of course, there again, it may have had something to do with their point of observation because Joe was seeing it from about 1,000 feet farther behind than John did.
John, just so you know, Jim, we have the picture, the computer-generated picture we have up.
Okay, you got the picture up. Well, that's it there. That's from John's description, and John sketched it out. He was not an artist, but that was all right. It was getting an idea, get something down there. And then he sat down with me, and we were able to actually do this in front of a computer and play around with it and try to set pull the details out and so on. That's where the pointed the 4 points in the end of it. That's what he described. That's the way it was. Now, he said he wasn't even sure, but he mentioned a green glow around that end of it, just a faint green glow. But then he got to thinking afterwards, too, that green glow may have been from the fact he was trying to view it up through tree limbs. Because,
Right.
The computer rendition of it was made without any obstructions. In reality, his view of it was never that clear, but he could see it like as it moved. He could change the position a little bit. Something we couldn't do unless we had an actual video being made or something like along those lines. But it's sort of a composite of all that he saw.
And go ahead and
Jim, were there any windows or anything to this thing?
No.
This is
No.
like they call it a cylinder type of object, but normally some of the cylinders would have some like windows or portals or ports, I should say. And there's four.
I asked that. Yeah, I asked those questions about for details. He said no, there was absolutely nothing on the side. The only thing he could see was in the one end, and he couldn't see the other end of it because of its orientation.
Right.
The other end of it was pointing away, so he doesn't know what what it looked like.
No noise or anything coming from it?
No noise at all.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever seen a cylinder that has 4 pointed ends. I'm kind of baffled about that one because normally you don't see that in cylinder type of sightings. Any idea what those four things were doing at the time? I know you don't know what they are, but I mean, what any action or any what's that?
The only possibility, we're just speculating here at this point. The only speculation I can come up with here is possibly they may have been responsible for the green glow at that end.
Okay.
Whether they were emitting some kind of radiation, light, heat, who knows? Everything's just speculation because he didn't see that they did anything other than the fact that they were there. And he couldn't see into the thing any farther, so even on the picture you can see there, we just kind of fades to black in there because we really can't say what's beyond that. We couldn't see it.
Do we know what kind of speed they were going at? This object was?
The object itself was stationary. It would sit for about 2 or 3 seconds and then jump. And it would jump sideways. It didn't go endways. It went sideways. And it would jump from one location so fast you could hardly see it, and then it would become stationary again for a few seconds, and then jump a second time. We don't know how many times it jumped the time that John ran down to take the picture, but he knew it made 2 or 3 jumps. He saw it and then it disappeared and he'd see it farther away.
So
now wait a minute, you said something pretty interesting. I just want to ask this, Commander, and then I'm sorry, I'll shut up.
No.
But he's mentioned that they're going sideways, but they jumped, and Jim, were they flat a microsecond or something? Did they disappear, or could they see the object moving from A to B?
He could see it move. He could see it move, but it moved so fast that he couldn't recognize it, just like it was here, and then he just like maybe. What speed would be, but it'd be like a jump, maybe a couple 1,000 miles an hour. You know, you expect you would still see it, but you couldn't focus in on it.
Right. The reason I ask that is because we have had people on the show talk about objects dimensionally going into one portal and popping out in a fraction of a second. So I'm just wondering if this object did the same thing.
No, I don't think it did from his description, because that was kind of, I did some questioning along those lines, and he didn't, he said that it physically moved. That's why I asked him, did it dematerialize and rematerialize someplace else? He said, no, he saw it. He could see it go from point A to point B, and then it would stop. And it never changed its orientation. It was always the same, north-south. The forward end, or we'll call it forward end, the end away from John was always pointed to the south. It never turned, rotated, or anything.
Very interesting. Wow. What I wanted to ask, when you said this jump, was it the travel path flat, or did it like gain altitude and come back down, like in a parabolic flight path?
Well, the problem with that, he couldn't be sure about it. About whether it went straight. We're assuming straight simply because during the time that he's going in there, he just get a glimpse of it up through the trees, and whether it went up or down until he got down to the field and saw it way off in the distance. At that point, he could see it just sort of go in a straight line between points, but there again, we're over a mile away. When it was close enough that he might have seen something, he didn't have a good unobstructed view of it. So anything he says there is going to be a subject to some conjecture.
Sure. So did they have any physical interactions? Did they experience anything?
No. The only thing that experienced anything was the vehicles themselves. And that's where John said he had his radio on, and the radio became staticky. He called it staticky just at the time that the engine shut down. And the radio, of course, went off at the same time. And of course, he got out of the vehicle there, so we don't know what happened at this point. But
Right.
When I got back up there, one of the things I did have with me, since I was on scene, able to do some investigations there, I did check battery voltages. Battery voltages on the vehicle actually read under no load condition. They were reading about 12.3, 12.5 volts. And at this point, I suggested, had they tried to start the cars, they tried to start them right as soon as it happened, and they wouldn't start. Well, after we were up there and talked for a while, they said, try them again, we'll see. And both vehicles started.
Interesting.
But that was one of the things I did. I use it for my paranormal investigations. I did grab my, I use a portable power source when I'm doing paranormal investigations. It has a deep cycle marine battery in it. So I figured, hey, if the batteries are dead, I can jump them off of that thing.
Sure.
Turns out it wasn't necessary, but yeah, I did check voltages. I had a magnetic anomaly detector and checked for residual magnetism, nothing found. And basically, there was nothing wrong with it. Now,
So
Joe, he was from out of the area. When he got home, he had his mechanic check his vehicle over.
Right.
And they could find nothing to cause a problem.
So what do you think threw off the electrical field in the car? I mean, are these newer or older vehicles?
They were a newer vehicle.
So pretty electrically sensitive. You know, there's not that's the sad part of our vehicles that are the newer ones, that they're not shielded real well, maybe on purpose. Right. What do you think happened?
I really don't know, because there again, my first thought was everybody says, well, these things drain batteries. Well, I figured if it drained the battery, I'm going to put a voltmeter on that battery and I'm not going to read anything. But when I read 12.3 volts or so, that's what you would expect.
Well, it sounded to me like if you have a big enough EMI field, or big enough EM field, I should say, that forms, it can knock your ground off. It can knock out what you have in an alternator or a generator type situation. And you have to do like a reset. You know, you have to like reground it out, or make sure that you can reset the wire path. I'm surprised that, there's like no circuit breakers were bad and you were able to get the vehicle started. No. So it sounds like a pure electrical, almost like an overload, like it was emitting. The way you said static occurred before that usually is an emission type reception on a radio.
Right. Yeah, that's see, my thoughts on that too. Like you say, they're newer vehicles. They do have the electronic controls and the computer controlled ignitions and all this. Now, it could very well be that when he says the battery was dead and wouldn't restart, I don't know what effect these computers, if something may have been scrambled in its brain that wouldn't let the thing turn over or whatever.
Right.
We can't say, because when it restarted, you can't fix something once it fixes itself.
Right.
Jim, did they check the car? Did they check the car for any abnormalities besides the electric parts? And the reason I ask that is because we've had cases where crafts have come in vicinity, did exactly what you're saying, shut the car down, and then we found out the side of the car that faces the craft have become magnetized, which is extremely unusual. But we have had cars magnetized. Also, they've drained the oil, and they sent the oil for analysis, and they found that the composition of the oil has changed. So I'm wondering, was there any type of fluctuation or anything that would have been suspicious that could have happened to these cars as far as being magnetized or anything of that nature?
Well, that's what I say with the magnetic effects. I did have a magnetic anomaly detector with me, and I did check the cars all around both vehicles for that, and I found nothing. There was no residual other than the natural effect that the Earth's magnetic field would have on a large metal body like that.
Right.
There was no residual. That I did check for.
How about physical injuries of the people? Did they come down with flu-like symptoms later, or any type of, kind of sick to their stomach, or any type of maybe radiation poisoning or anything of that nature?
I specifically asked those questions in the later interviews by phone and also in person, and he said there was nothing to it other than what they observed. There were no physical effects to it at all.
Yeah, because some people, when they've seen some kind of discharge from these things, like that green glow, it makes me curious because some people have actually had, and I go back to the most famous one, the Cash Landrum case, where the object actually had a discharge so much, and it was radiation, they had to dig up the road and everything. So when we hear about these, I call them discharges, but with these glows like green or orange or whatever, we always ask if there's been any type of physical side effects, that because that's becoming very popular now, that people have had encounters like you just described. Down the road, they've had problems with, their physical nature and stuff. They're had MRIs. They found white spots on their brain. They've developed different types of flu-like symptoms and things of that nature.
Well, this is still, like I said, this happened on July 2nd. So technically, I won't close the case out for at least 6 months to a year. So it's still an open case and still subject to any revision.
Jim, take the audience through the process. You have this initial, get the call, and it was very fortunate you were there to get it. You're out there, very, very quick response. That's different from most of your call outs, correct? I mean, it's usually a longer process, correct?
Usually I get it a day or two later or something else, and by then there's nothing there. But I was able to, I tried to take advantage of that to the best that I could. Like I said, I had something that I grabbed to take with me.
So you had this first initial interview. You do your verbal and you're talking to them interview. You've separated them out to try to get the two independent. It's. I mean, Chris is going to crack up, but I mean that's your basic investigator 101, right? You want everybody's version of the car accident, and you don't want them feeding on each other. So you get that straightened out. So explain to us how this all broke up. How long were you guys there? And as you took your notes and your measurements and checked batteries and stuff like that?
No, I was probably on the scene about an hour.
Right.
By then, there wasn't finding any. Had given me time to look for any physical evidence. Nobody was reporting any kind of illnesses or injury, anything like that. And Joe had to be on his way because he's from out of the area, and he wanted to get going. John, on the other hand, he's local, and I've talked to him several times since, and that's where we actually got together and made the drawing. He just sketched it out on the back of a piece of paper he had there, what it looked like, and that's when I made the comment about the artistic ability earlier on. That's when I got the idea. Well, let's just do this right. Make the computer generated.
Cool.
Put some depth to it. But he drew a piece of pipe with some arrows in it, and he just went through his arrows. But
so now you've got one guy local, you've got one guy that's out of the area. What's your follow up with them? How does that work?
Okay. All right. One thing there that held things up quite a bit. Now I'm able to discuss this now. This is not in the initial report. It's not on Stan's report or anything, because at the time, Joe, who's not in the area, when he got home, of course, he's talking about what happened and everything. He gets this call from some anonymous source that says it would be in your best interest to forget about this. And he hung up.
Really?
Yeah. Now, how he found out, whether it's just some joker, somebody playing a game with him or whatever. Anyway, when he did that, he contacted me and wanted this raised up to pretty confidentiality levels. Currently, it's a 2, and that's what I had it at the time. He wanted it raised up to a 3, at least his aspect of it, which means basically I can't discuss anything other than the fact that it happened.
Right.
Well, finally, after some time went by, this report held this up. And I spoke with him again, and he said, nothing's happened. Nobody's contacted me. I talked him into lowering it back down to a 2. So now I can discuss the fact that he got the phone call. See, that's not in the initial report for that reason, because he didn't want that going out. And as a level 3, it couldn't go out.
All right, so let's just take a quick aside because I can already see Chris ready to leap in here. I'll start it out, Chris, and I'll turn it over to you. What do you think that was about?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Come on, give me some kind of a guess here. On the scale of somebody joking around with him, I mean, it seems to me it's one of two possibilities. Someone was able to figure out that the three of you were together post this event, or he was speaking and someone overheard it and thought it would be funny or a joke to pull his leg.
Personally, I lean towards the latter. I think
Okay.
it was just one of his friends trying to pull a prank or something else, because the interesting thing about it, if Joe gets a call out of state about something that happens, and the other two of us, and everybody knows that I investigate this stuff, would you not think that I would have gotten some kind of a call or some kind of a contact as a result? I got nothing.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I wouldn't, if I was someone who didn't want this discussed for whatever reason, and I'll go down my normal avenue. I like, that this was some piece of sensitive technology that's flying along, is seen, probably doing some collection, probably pretty easy to figure out that cell phone. I mean, it would be pretty easy to go back to cell phone towers and track where the calls went. All that stuff's recorded. If it's a collection device, I wouldn't approach you with a 10-foot cylinder flying silently over your house, because you are not going to be easily shaken or thrown off because you've been doing this for a long time. In fact,
Exactly.
you might be able to throw some switches pretty quick with that network and really turn that thing around. So I can understand that, but when you have two people and only one of them gets the call, I would tend to start to lean on your conclusion that somebody's having a little sport with them on this because they overheard the story and go forward. Because if they wanted to slow it down, I think they would have approached both of them, and they simply would have said to you, "Hey, look, we don't want to talk about this anymore, and we don't want any of this information released."
Right. Now, the other thing that brings up, to follow up on that a little bit too, Joe did not call me. John called me from his cell phone.
Right.
John did not get the call. Joe got the call. Now,
Right.
John,
That's what I'm saying. So
supposing
now, is this
would have me?
right? So if it is going to be something nefarious that's going on, that's a pretty sophisticated collection that's gone on. I am assuming that Joe had a cell phone.
He had one with him, yeah.
Right.
Apparently he did. He had a phone, but because he called his auto service before
Right.
I got there, he said, "Well, I got to get the guy to come out here, charge my battery or whatever."
Right.
But yeah, he made that call.
Right. So what I'm saying is that's a fairly sophisticated collection of picking up all the phones, through a cell phone tower or through an overflight activity where you scoop up the numbers and grab that material. So I can see that happening that way. But to me, only going after one person is very strange to me out of that. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. I'm going to put my investigator's hat on. So, Jim, when you got the call, and you got it from John, correct?
I got it from John. It actually came in as a text message.
All right. So they both had cell phones, correct?
Yes.
Right. Both had cell phones.
Okay, but neither one was able to take a picture of this object.
Well, Joe, in his case, he was 1,000 feet up the road. By the time he saw it, it was gone. He didn't even get a good look at it. John was
Okay.
only about 200 yards or so from this field. John would have had to go the other 1,000 feet just to get down to or Joe would have had to go the other 1,000 feet to get down to where John was. So John had about a 1,000-foot head start on him to run down the road and try to get the picture.
Okay. What was their demeanor? So neither one was able to get pictures, correct?
Well, John took pictures. It was just by the time he got there, they were too far away to make anything out of it. Yeah, John, I have pictures, but there's just nothing there. I mean, I could put.
Have you had them analyzed, Jim?
I did my photo analysis here, and I couldn't enhance anything. That's one thing I do have the software and everything to do here at the lab.
What was their demeanor?
Enhanced them, and there just wasn't anything to it. The number of pixels involved, it's
Right.
at such distance, and the resolution such that you just couldn't get down any closer.
No, that's understandable.
Didn't do any good.
What was their demeanor when you got there?
No, other than
Were they
bit.
calm? Were they like, it's no big deal? Or, I mean, I was like, when I first had my sighting, I was like a schoolboy that playing spin the bottle for the first time. I was like, I mean, come on, you're seeing a UFO. I'm serious. I was like, going crazy.
there was excitement, obviously, but there was no fear or nothing like that. Nobody was cowering in their vehicle, anything like that. He was curious.
How much publicity did this case get afterwards? I mean, you're a professional, so I know you're not going to be blabbing all over, but I'm wondering how much publicity did they go to the newspaper after you or the radio or anything?
No, it never made the paper that I know. I didn't. John never.
No, I actually did a cursory search, Jim, when we was getting ready for the show to see if anything had showed up in the newspaper. And to be quite honest with you, it seems like the local media there is really not that interested in these stories anymore.
No, well, that's a whole different ball game there.
Well, we'll bring that up on the other half of the other side of the hour for sure.
I tend to agree with what Commander said about this thing. It's one of two things. It's one, it's ours and it's experimental, and of course they can grab a tower cell phone. I mean, that's not any big type of super secret, sophisticated thing, and just tell the guy, hey, keep your mouth shut, kind of a deal, which has happened in the past before. Or it's somebody just playing a prank. The guy goes to a diner and goes, hey, I saw a UFO the other day. Let's torque up John or Joey and give them a call saying we're the Men in Black. I mean, because obviously all that stuff is popular nowadays.
So these two, I just want to grab last couple bits on this. We're coming down to our last 4 or 5 minutes for this segment. They don't know each other before this. Have they maintained any kind of relationship since?
No.
Okay.
Actually, unless they've got together on their own, and there again, I don't know how they would have, because I have both the contact information for both here, and I've never shared either one with the opposite. So unless they got together on their own at the time they were talking, and they exchanged information. However, they said they didn't. So.
And this is pretty much settled out for them. As far as you know, there hasn't been any additional contacts or experiences, right?
Not with them, no.
Right.
Yeah, we may
that was pretty qualified. Did you catch that, Chris? Not with them.
Yeah.
Jim's making me pretty good. He's reeling me in slowly. He knew he had the hook set a week ago, but boy, he's letting me play the line.
He's got the hook in.
Yeah, I was going to bring you the next part of this thing if you want to wait till after the break.
Yeah, we'll wait till after the break.
Another side to this, it just came out, and this is recent.
Well,
yeah, it's an interesting case because people are now seeing more and more cylinders.
Well, just whatever. I have the information here, and I can speak on a second sighting on September the 18th, same area.
Interesting.
This is 7:30 at night. Woman's going northbound on 119 in front of the same field where John went down and took the picture, and her vehicle was buzzed by 3 spheres, 12 inches diameter, about hood height above the road, shot across in front of her. She said she would have hit them had she not slammed on the brakes.
And
I think he's breaking up. Commander, you froze there for a minute. You okay?
I was going to say, was there any sound, Jim, in her sighting experience?
No. Other than her screeching tires when she hit the brakes, that was it.
Amazing.
They shot across the road directly at, it said at hood height, the way she described it. It said had she not slammed on the brakes, she would have hit them. And they were across the road in a matter of 2 seconds down into the field and were gone. Where they came from and where they went to, she couldn't say.
Well, that would put it in at a minimum. The average width of a road that fast transiting across, that would put it about 3 digits speed. I'd say at least
definitely
100, 120 knot plus kind of speed.
Definitely.
Yeah. Just doing the quick calculation.
You didn't get any detail.
Very interesting.
I wanted to see 12, it said about 12 inches in diameter, white glowing spheres. One followed the other.
Well, we're coming up to our first break. If those of you that are listening to the show, please drop me an email or drop it into the comment section if you're watching the show via the one of our many link ups, and we can talk to Jim. We're going to pick up a little more in this case, and then we're going to expand it out to get Jim's take on some of the other UAP, UFO things that are going on. Tonight we're with Chris DiPerno. We're missing Don Ecker tonight because he's taking care of his ailing wife, who we are sending prayers and best wishes to a speedy recovery, that she's feeling better and that Don is actually helping her and to that recovery. And this is UAP Crossfire on KGR Radio DB. Our guest tonight, Jim Brown at jimsdestination.com. And Jim is a longtime investigator in the Western Pennsylvania area. And he's one of those folks like myself that sees this as not a separate function. It's UAPs, paranormal, cryptid. There seems to be a lot of intersection and a lot of activities. Always makes me think of Paul Eno, because Paul was probably the first person that really schooled me on this kind of activity, having a large cross-section. Stay with us. We'll be back in about 2 to 3 minutes to pick up the second hour of UAP Crossfire. Well, welcome back to UAP Crossfire. Chris DiPerno, my co-host tonight. Don Ecker is out taking care of Vicky. Well, our very special guest is Jim Brown, who's been taking us through a case. I'm going to turn this over to Chris, but Jim, what I'm going to ask is, I want you to correlate this last investigation piece about the spheres going by, and I'm going to put the question up, and I'm going to let Chris run this next opening here. What do you think happened? What's your conclusions?
I really have no defined conclusions. I basically have a report here. There was no physical evidence, anything like that. I wasn't even able to go out to the scene at the time. But of course, she said once she slammed on the brakes, the thing was gone. Everything was cleared up. Her car was not affected. I mean, she didn't have any reporting of any kind of a automotive problem at all. Just
no distortion of the radio or anything, Jim?
No, she didn't. She didn't say didn't have the radio on either. But she just said everything was running normal, and she just slammed on the brakes. The lights were. It was late at 7:30 at night whenever it happened. About 45 minutes after local sunset. So the headlights would have been on, but yeah, they were unaffected.
What color did she say the orb was?
Three of them. They were white, about 12 inches in diameter.
12 inches in diameter, and it was white color, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
that's sweet.
Now, there's always been this confusion. I won't say confusion, but there's always been this contested stuff about orbs. Some people say it's ball lightning. Some people say it's a scout ship. Some people say it's just a plasma burst. I don't even know what a plasma burst is. But there's all different theories of what an orb is. So let's start there. Jim, what is your take of all your experience? What do you think an orb is in your best guess? I know nobody knows exactly what it is, but your best guess.
My personal thoughts be some sort of a plasma or a charge, sort of like an effective ball lightning, something along those lines. Because now we're going to rule out, first of all, whenever you say orb has a bad rap because of the ghost hunters, because those are just dust on the pictures. These shine by their own light. That's
funny you should say that.
Light.
Now, this is not me saying it, but when you said that just brought up something that Lou Elizondo said. Now, you know Lou Elizondo, right? He's supposed to be one of the gurus of ufology and stuff. He claims that an orb was in his house. His whole family saw it, and it was floating down the hallway. And, maybe I got that video. Let me see if there's video of Lou Elizondo that I have here. And I'd really love to have your explanation of this or contest it.
You gradually start.
Brother, I saw other videos. That's just one. I mean, there were some that were. I mean, there's one I really wish I could talk about. It was in 4K ultra high definition video. Anybody sees that video, and there's people in the Intel community that have seen it, and they're just like, okay, yeah, that's a game changer. I mean, that there's no doubt what we're looking at that point. That is not ours. That's what frustrates me, because those videos are there. There are people that are aware of it. A lot of people. It's kind of a bad kept secret at this point. The problem is how that video was taken, where it was taken, under the circumstances is very classified. So it probably won't ever see the light of day.
Convenient.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you, look, honestly, where it was, I mean, I looking at it, I can say, yeah, that probably shouldn't come out, as compelling as it is, because it is, there's reasons to keep there's a couple videos there, well, more than a couple that really are sensitive, because of the circumstances of the collection, that we were doing.
Okay, so I apologize, but he does go on to say that he had an experience with an orb in his house. And there's a lot of controversy about orbs. Like you said, you think that it could be ball lightning, plasma, things of that nature. But when people are seeing them in the house, not with cameras and stuff, what do you think that is? Or do you still contend that maybe dust particles and stuff?
No. Let me be clear about that. When I mentioned dust, I mentioned that for the benefit of anyone or the paranormal community, the ghost hunters along those lines.
Okay.
Those pictures, we've all seen them. It's nothing more than dust close to the lens. These do not. We'll let out first that we're not talking about those orbs, because those we know what causes those. But yeah, I've gotten reports as well of balls of light. It's not the only one. I have kept several cases where balls of light have been seen shining by their own light under various conditions. Some close up, some been reports of them coming through walls in the house.
Right. Do you think that is ball lightning, or do you? I mean,
no.
It sounds more like paranormal, to be honest with you, than ufology. What do you think, Jim?
There again, anything I say is just going to be a wild guess, and I mean,
I'll take your wild guess.
Yeah, if I was to say something like that, I would say interdimensional. Now, what constitutes interdimensional is up for speculation as well, but yeah, they defy the logic, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're talking a different those type of orbs. It may be similar to what she saw at that particular case that shot across the road. Like she said, she was afraid she would hit him, but had she hit him, would she have hit anything?
Exactly, Jim. Exactly.
Yeah. Do you think what she reported had mass, Jim, or was some kind of an energy state?
According to her, she called it a physical object.
Right.
Again, but she had no way to measure it. So
right.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it did or didn't have mass. Based on her description, it acted like something that had mass. But there again, since it didn't pass through anything, we don't know if it was capable or whether it would have passed through the car.
Right.
There again, if it was interdimensional, who knows what would have happened.
Well, your retelling of the description and the speed made me default. I mean, in my mind, I tied the two events together. You guys, I think one of you said it earlier. This could be a small autonomous vehicle for scouting off that larger cylinder vehicle. And I'm going to go one step further, because I've got nothing better than just the first impression of looking and listening to everything Jim said. Entry and exit port at the end of the cylinder, is that where these things enter and leave to go out? We're doing that actively with airplanes. We're doing that actively with autonomous drones right now, where we're sending drones out. They're coming back. They reconnect up like airplanes to get fuel or even electricity if they're electrically driven. Mm-hmm. And going back into the launch base to move to another location. So one quick before I want you can respond to that 1 second. I want to add into it. is this area, Jim, that these two events have occurred? Is there military? Is there research activity that goes on? I know the general vicinity. I know that there are flight paths through there for training, different altitude training areas in there. Has your investigation showed anything that points to this is a high activity area for a reason?
There's nothing, basically nothing there. There's an old gas well down in the middle of that field down in there is the only, and there again, it's been there probably for 50 years, but that's the only thing there in that immediate area. And there again, the other thing you were mentioning about the two cases, we do have to keep in mind there's 2 months in between there. So there again, she didn't report any of the effects that John or Joe did.
Right, because she wasn't near the cylinder as far as we can determine. So in Cobra's mind, what you have here is you have a route of flight or an activity that's using this general vicinity for whatever reason, close to where they originate from. You're doing training flights, test flights, activity. Because I'm going down the road that this is not an extraterrestrial sourcing, that this has got something else that's a little more terrestrial.
Right. Well, that's the way I look at it too. I'm not. I've seen nothing yet that says it's going to be extraterrestrial.
So now,
no evidence, no proof of that.
So now, are our spheres, are our orbs, are they the post or pre-flight activity to see what's around before this vehicle flies by, or is it a very integrated system that's out there flying with the parts coming out? Because I'm going to hook it back to what Mr. Alessandro said in that which upsets me greatly, he talks about these videos and then says, well, we should never actually let these videos be seen because these videos are so sensitive in the way we collect it or what's going on.
Then why bring them up?
Look at it, it's not that. Well, you can't have it every direction, and he's trying to have it in every direction. I've seen it.
Yeah.
You can't know what it is because what we did to get this. So you're just, it's just layering on top of layering on there, but it's really, really cool. I wish I could tell you. It's like the old days when somebody who had gone on a very sensitive, I'd love to tell you, but I can't. Or the old line, I could tell you, but then I have to kill you. That nonsense.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of makes me think about that. If he sees this activity and it's a really sensitive activity, was he looking at a similar type of system?
Yeah, that we really don't know. See, my question, or what always raises a question with me about these kind of things, let's say for a minute that he's right. Say it is some sort of a military or some clandestine operation. Then why would you fly it in the middle of the daytime when everybody's out? Why would you not fly this thing at 2 a.m. when the chances of discovering it or being seen are much less?
That I cannot give you a good answer for, because I would go down the same road. We almost exclusively do these kinds of activities in isolated, although where you're at is kind of isolated in comparison to what's going on.
Yeah, well, you mentioned too about the air flights and everything along here. Chestnut Ridge, I know for the visual flight, there's a lot of helicopters and airplanes going back and forth here because they follow Chestnut Ridge for the visual flight.
Right.
So that is a main flyway along the base of Chestnut Ridge.
It sure is.
Jim, I want to ask you about orbs again. Have you had any cases where the orbs either break apart and become two separate orbs or melt together? I've had cases where 3, 4, even 5 orbs have joined together to one, or they split apart. And then I've actually had a case where somebody claims this was a mothership and orbs were coming out of there. That's why I tend to believe that they're more like scout ships, like Commander said, checking the terrain and stuff. But have you had cases like that?
I personally haven't. I know that I've talked to Stan. He's mentioned one in particular where a woman had one in the house like that, and she swatted it with a broom and it split in half.
I'm not sure that's a UFO if they can be split with a broom.
Yeah, was it flew around? He's related that story a couple of times, but.
Well, now we know how to take care of UFOs. We just swat them with a broom.
Swat them with a broom.
Yeah, that's interesting and stuff.
That could be a really interesting sales pitch for really picking up the sales of brooms.
I'm going to start selling ufology brooms tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'll put it online. How to get rid of your...
Would you do me a favor and put like a GoPro or something on it so I can get some blurry images of during the swatting process?
Yeah, we'll try to get some people.
Batteries, you can put a nice power source right down there on the broom handle. Easy turn on and turn off. Earlier in the evening, Jim, you talked about laws of physics and the approach that you use and defying laws of physics. A lot of these things do seem to defy, though, the physics as we know it now. Would you agree that we are possessing or we are pressing technology that will allow us to do things that obviously this cylinder does not fly like anything that I fly. This is not this propulsion, its ability to fly, to be above the surface of the earth is nothing like what I do with airfoils and thrust. Agree with that?
No, that's a fair determination. To expand a little bit on that, when I say the law of physics, I was referring to the equipment that we use to test and evaluate this phenomenon. The thing is, we develop a piece of equipment that does a certain thing, works a certain way. We know how it works, why it works, and what's supposed to make it work. Now, if we design to do this, then we know its limitations. I'll use a good example being, if you get into the little paranormal aspect of it, the ghost box, for example. Okay, it's nothing more than a broken radio, as far as I'm concerned. It scans between radio stations. But then you start looking at that, what is required to actually tune to the radio station, and what would be required if it be a spirit or alien or whatever was going to use this ghost box to communicate? What would it have to do? That we can define because we built the ghost box. We know how it works. We know the chips we used when we built it and what's required of them. So we can say without a doubt that whatever the spirit would have to do, it has to meet those criteria. Kind of approach it from the back end instead of trying to figure out what it did, look at the equipment and see what the equipment's capable of and go backwards on it.
So since you're on that subject, what do you think of what you see on popular television about the ghost box?
Junk. I call it a paradolia box. I call it a pareidolia box, if you're familiar with the term pareidolia.
Yeah.
That's how they work.
I was kind of guessing that you were maybe going down that lane a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, you didn't mince words on that too quickly, so we'll move on. All right. Let me give a positive twist here. One other thing, since we're on this kind of a topic, often people will do the mag light, very sensitive adjusting of the light, and then talk to the entity and tell the entity that if they can make the light flicker, and I'll ask it to do that. What's your take on that?
It's just a matter there again. It's a matter of the physics. The loose connection obviously creates heat, and when you get creating heat in electrical connection, you get expansion. It expands, it closes, it contracts, it opens. So it's going to cycle off and on. If you ever notice when they do this, and this is the one thing they never tell you, you always see them, is there anyone here? And of course, the light comes on, yes. And they ask another question, and it goes back out. But there's a rhythm to those questions. There's about 15 seconds in between those questions. Now, if you time your question just right, you can get a response.
Sure.
And that's what they do inadvertently. They're not doing it intentionally, but that's the normal way human works. It's just like the pareidolia idea. I'll tell you the little experiment I did, and if somebody wants to try it, they can. In the lab, you're familiar with a white noise generator. It just creates random noise, nothing to it. I took a white noise generator and then I pulse that at a 100 millisecond pulse rates, which just matches the average length of phoneme in speech. That's how long the phonemes in human speech are, generally around 100 milliseconds. So I've got the cadence of human speech. Now I'm pulsing this thing, and then I throw a little bit of filtering in to raise and attenuate, raise some and attenuate other frequencies, and I switch that around. So you get a varying, just a bunch of noise like that. And then what I'll do, I'll take that recording, created this in the lab, and if you want to see paranoia at work, you get a group of people together, play the recording, and you say, this is what I heard, and come up with something that sounds the right length, or a speech or something, and ask how many people heard that, and you'll get hands go up. And then here's where it really gets interesting, and you go to part 2 of that experiment, and you say, well, that's not really what I heard. Did you hear? And then I'll come up with something else. And some of those same people are going to hear that too. When in reality, since it was generated by human noise in a laboratory, we know there's no message there.
Right.
But they'll come up with that. And that just shows an example of how the mind works. And that's perfect example of paranoia.
Now, Jim, when I get the impression from you, though, that you are a believer in extraterrestrials, UFOs of extraterrestrial nature, and I think you and I, the little bit that we've been talking leading up to this, think that a lot of the things that we see are man-made tech of, for whatever the source of it is. I think you are also kind of a spiritualist. I think you believe that there is activity in the paranormal world. Is that correct?
That's correct. I don't necessarily, when you go into the paranormal world, I don't necessarily believe the traditional ghost theory, as it's called. The traditional ghost theory is somebody dies and they're stuck on Earth or whatever. I don't necessarily believe that. I think there's something going on, but I think we need to think outside the box. And that's back to where we started this whole thing. If you ever, and this is what kind of got me interested in it, if you consider the traditional sighting of an alien, like a mission or something like that, you have a lot of times it's a hooded figure, comes, passes through the wall, it floats above the floor, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you don't see the feet or anything, it sort of floats above the floor at the foot of the bed. And somebody says, well, that's the alien, that's how they were when they came in and got me. And then you talk to the ghost person, says, well, that's a full-bodied apparition. Are we looking at the same phenomena, just how we interpret it?
All right, so Chris will be rolling in on this as I'm going to throw this into play. It's a little bit sooner than I wanted to bring in the talk. And Genghis Khan, I really like your comment. I promise I'm going to get to it before we close out the show. You sounded like when you started out in the UFO, UAP investigation and interest, you didn't necessarily connect it to any kind of paranormal activity. Now you see this intersection.
That's correct. Yeah, that's based on.
Do you think that that's finally winding down? Because early on, and there's still a number of folks I talk to, people that are in the UAP, UFO centered on that, really, many of them don't want to talk about paranormal activity. And cryptids are like another subset. And a lot of people just don't see those circles, those spheres, to use the term from earlier this evening, those orbs intersecting and having common ground. What's been your experience on that? And Chris, I'll let you pick it up after Jim comments.
Well, personally, I think as more and more information comes in, and we look at the commonalities between them, I think we maybe just how we interpret it, or how there again, when I say how we interpret it, I have to open up another potential can of worms. There is something controlling how we interpret it. Is there a force above and beyond that causes us to see it a certain way? Now, with that in mind, then is there something tying this all together? I don't think you can actually isolate one from the other and say this is extraterrestrial, this is a cryptid, and this is a ghost. I think it may just be various interpretations of the same phenomenon.
Okay, that's interesting. First, let me ask you this, Jim. What's your definition of paranormal? What constitutes paranormal to you?
Well, to me, I would even include UAPs as a paranormal in that they're something that's not natural that we know. I'm not, of course, there again, that's a generalities because if it's man-made, obviously it's natural. But anything that we can't explain, paranormal to me simply means that it's outside of the normal.
Okay, let me ask you this then. With that being outside the normal, do you think spiritual reality goes into this? Do you think there's something demonic or spiritual about all this stuff if it's all kind of lumped sum? There are some people who actually believe this is all demonic.
Well, I won't go to that. My first question, the one that I get those questions from time to time, how can you study this? Because, personally, I'm a Christian, and, why does a Christian believe in this kind of stuff? But in reality, though, I don't think half the stuff they call demonic is.
What, in your experience, what would you differentiate from the phenomenon that you study and demonic? Because you got this pretty well battened down. Well,
to me, demonic, when you have to, I don't know how far we want to go into this as far as religion, he asked. But
well, we had a pastor on last week, so don't worry. We've broke most of this ice, I think.
Well, see, to me, the purpose of a demon, the demon's purpose is basically to separate man from God. Mm-hmm. Now, that's fine for a demon. And then you start asking yourself, if that's the case, demons aren't stupid. They know how to do this. They're very good. Their deceptions, that's their forte. If that's the case, then how is some of this stuff going to separate man from God if you're going to go in there and do all this stuff that's attributed to demons? Because right away, the demonologist says, well, it's all this evil and all this activity and negativity. I'd be more concerned if everything was going right.
Okay, that's a really fair point.
There you have a point that you could actually go in there and possibly sway somebody's opinion. But the spinning heads and green vomit that Hollywood portrays, no. Like that's going to do anything to convince man to give up God? I don't think so.
No, but here's this part B of my question about that, Jim, because this leads into my question. So how would you have all these supernatural things happening, all these things about paranormal? How do you separate the good stuff from the bad stuff, the hoaxes? I don't want to say bad stuff. The legitimate, the stuff that you think is legitimate, and the stuff that you think are hoaxes. Because obviously, in any field you get in paranormal, there's going to be hoaxes.
Sure. Yeah, I've had them. People come in here and I've stories there. It's just a matter of, first thing there goes back to just some common sense and investigative procedures. You talk to somebody for a while, and if you've done much in the way of investigating, probably in 5 minutes whether this guy's on the level or whether he's embellishing. And if he embellishes one thing, then he's going to embellish something else. And all of a sudden the whole story just becomes, I approach everything from that point of view. I sometimes ask leading questions, which they say never ask a leading question. Well, I would disagree with that. Supposing you said, all right, use the ball, use those three spheres, for example. The lady described them as white. Now, supposing I come back to you and you were telling me the story, and I come back to you and said something. Now, which way did those green spheres go? Now, that's a leading question. I implied they were green, but I was wrong. How do you respond to that? If you're hoaxing, you're going to, well, they went down the field. If you're not hoaxing, you're going to correct me right away and says, no, they were white.
Yeah, that's a perfect technique that's used, and sure. I've used it many times myself. And I've switched the story or breaking the story up in different parts and go over certain parts to see if it's embellished or changed. That's stuff. So you do so much stuff. You do cryptids, Bigfoot, and everything. in that amount, and I'm going to put you on the line here, and I apologize for that, but how many stories do you think that you have done? Is there a certain percentage that you might say, well, I got 10% that are hoaxes and all my stuff. I got 5% or things of that nature?
Well, I'm going to have to classify them as three ways. I would say probably maybe 5% are hoaxes. The vast majority of them, though, I can't resolve simply because I don't have enough data. They remain unknown simply because either the witness doesn't have the information or it doesn't have the details to give me. I can only go so far because, I can't theorize things. I can put together I can come up with a theory as to what might have happened, but I can't disprove it, or I can't prove it. When it reaches that point, you just kind of reach that state that this is going to go no farther. We're just going to have to carry it as an unknown. And that may very well be where this winds up with the cylindrical object.
But the valuable part, though, Jim, is that when you build a record and you're following good rules like that, it allows the future investigators and the future researchers that look at this to have organized data. That's one of the things that really plagued a lot of the activities until things like MUFON and other folks came in and kind of formalized the process. A lot of it was sensationalized, and a lot of it was actively used to deceive people. Don't look at what my left hand is doing while my right hand is waving in your face. Activity going on there, and undoubtedly, I think you would agree with us that there's probably a very organized and somewhat sophisticated suppression or desire to suppress or control a lot of the information. Let me throw that question out to you now. Have you ever encountered that you felt that someone was trying to shut you down or monitor your activities that really wasn't in the full spirit of trying to solve this?
I haven't personally had to deal with any that I know of. I should back up a little bit there, that I know of where anyone's tried to manipulate it, because to me, as an investigator, if somebody tries to manipulate something, that red flag goes up. And that's the first sign that if you're trying to manipulate it, that raises a whole bunch of questions with me. Why? What are you trying to hide? Personally, I think a lot of this stuff, if they don't want the truth to come out, they just need to not say anything. But when they send these little tidbits of information out and then don't follow through with it, that just raises the bar, makes investigators look harder.
Well, we're going to drive into that the last half hour here of the show. I want to get one comment that came up from Genghis Khan, one of our very dedicated listeners. And he was thinking, is there a geographical or mineral formations in this area that would cause magnetic anomalies? Is there a reason that this would be an interesting area to be there? And to me, the little bit that I've looked into this particular part, and I like I told you, I worked and was living out in the woods in many parts of Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I looked around and I didn't see anything in there. There's nothing that's really noted on aeronautical charts. Like there's certain parts where I live here in Maine, there's certain islands that the iron ore content is so high in the island that if you fly near it, you have a warning to, your compass is going to be thrown off because it's just going to throw your reading off. Do you see anything that would lend to why this is, from a geological aspect, why this would be an area of such high activity?
There are iron deposits along Chestnut Ridge, various places. Matter of fact, the one in particular that this goes back several years. One thing I do have here at the house, I do have a magnetic anomaly detector running 24/7, just on the possibility that something might trip the thing, UFO, whatever.
Right.
Now it'll trip an alarm and nothing else. I can go out and look up in the sky and see what I see. But there's one location. It's about 4 miles from here. It's on the other side of Smithfield. I'm not sure who owns it now. The Bureau of Mines had it for a while, and they were doing some experiments over there trying to isolate iron ore deposits, and what they were doing was creating an extremely strong pulse of a magnetic field underground. And of course, they were looking for the response from that. That was part of the project. I got a response here one time and was able to pinpoint down the line where this came from, and it came through there. So I went over and I actually asked the place at the time. This was several years ago. I said, I got a tour of the place, and he would tell me what they were doing, and I explained to me that he tripped this thing off 4 miles away. And they confirmed exactly what it was. I mean, I had the data logger here, had recorded the pulse, and it was the exact same pulse they had sent out. So it definitely came from their source. Now, I don't know that they're still, I think they closed that down, and I think there's a quarry working up in there now. But,
very interesting.
Yeah, that was the only activity I had ever had here. The closest I ever came, and we'll have to go back probably 10 or 12 years for that. One of the things that UFOs supposedly follow power lines.
Right.
Well, I'll give you the story on this, and I've got to look this one up because I'm making sure on the date now. We're going to go back at least 10 or 12 years. But I had a witness contacted me. They were parked underneath one of those high tension lines up on top of Chestnut Ridge about 1 a.m. And they felt the pulsation, shook the car and everything else, and saw this donut-shaped object moving about 500 feet above the power line, following the power line westward. This was at 1 a.m., and they were sure of the time because they had a radio on, and I guess whatever they'd been playing, it just went to 1 o'clock, whatever the program started then. But, they were parked up there and watched this thing moving down along this power line. Well, just by coincidence, it's a 500 kilovolt transmission line. And just by coincidence, it was that same line runs about 800 feet behind my house. Well, at 1:15 in the morning, like I said, this thing was moving very slow along the power line, this glowing object, and they lost sight of it then. 1:15, my magnetic anomaly detector goes off, and I went out and looked all around. I didn't see a thing. Then I looked above the power line because I know the propensity of those things to see them. But, it definitely had a pulse there, and you could see on my data logger, it showed where it took the dip as it passed the 0 point on where the magnetic anomaly detector, where the coil is on that. When it passed in front of that, the polarity flipped, which is what it would do.
Right.
But 1:15, if you do the calculations based on his estimate of the speed and everything, it took 15 minutes for it to get from the top of Chestnut Ridge down to where it's behind my house.
And that distance would give it what kind of a speed?
Just be a matter of maybe a matter of feet per minute. Really, it was very slow.
Yeah. Right. So when you describe this, and check me on the tech. That close to a power line, able to absorb energy, and you have a combination of lighter than air and other propulsion technologies that's doing that. There was countless aircraft or aerospace vehicles, might be a better way to put it, that were talked about for that. And it's funny that you said the donut shape. Chris, do you have the picture for the audience from the Canadian release that I sent you?
Yeah, I was going to ask him about that right here.
So, Jim, I don't know if you follow this, but we went balloon hunting in 2023. We shot down in a very short time after the first spherical balloon, which is a PRC generated event on that first one that got shot down off the coast of South Carolina. We had a couple up in Alaska, and a picture was released by the Canadian government, armed forces, that shows a donut shape. Did I send you the picture before?
I have the picture. Yeah, I have it. Which one you mean? So,
to me, that little area that's blocked out on the donut shape looks like a shadow to me.
Right.
Obviously, this looks like a picture that was then printed out and scanned on a copier. I mean, you lose a lot of the stuff on there.
Right.
But that would be my guess, is that opening that's at the 10 o'clock or so position shown on the picture almost looks like a shadow to me. But I can't really give you a good reason why there would be a shadow there.
That was when I saw that picture, that was the first thing that come to my mind is why is there a segment of it missing?
Right.
Because my witness described this as a blue-white donut, and it was complete, had a hole in the middle. So there was no missing segment on his.
So now let's delve into. You're a learned man. You've done this for a long time. I'm not obviously I'm not putting you on the spot, but there seems to be many competing stories that are working the UAP UFO story. You have different agencies, different agents of the government, different former agents of the government that are coming out, some testifying before Congress. There seems to be a flurry of activity when Congress is interested. Now you have this thing where the U.S. government didn't release it, but the Canadian government released it, and that picture is the report of the one that was one of the things that was shot down in that flurry of activity that we had when they were flying. What's your take? You've been at this for a long time. What do you think is happening here on this aspect of various competing stories where one government agency says there's nothing, other ones say there is, and now you have people come out and say there is, and you need to be very scared?
I personally think that some of this is disinformation. That some of this being put out there, some truthful, some maybe not so truthful, but it may be put out there just to sow confusion, or to deflect someone's observations away from a certain angle,
or complete distraction to other things
going to happen, Jim?
Pardon?
Do you think disclosure is going to happen if we're getting all this disinformation?
I don't look for it in any significance in the near future. My opinion. Now they could prove me wrong tomorrow and release this stuff, but I personally don't think that we're going to get more tidbits of information come out, and it's going to be something we either already know or it's not going to be significant.
Here's the crazy thing that I take from this F-22 Raptor shoot down. There was 3 objects shot down. One was in the Yukon Territory. The other one supposedly landed in Lake Huron, and the other one went out to sea and stuff. So they found the one that was out to sea.
Right.
And that was right. And they made a recovery on that, and that was in deep water. Am I correct on that, Commander?
Yeah, but the way they did it, they had folks that were pretty prepared to do the recovery.
Right.
So yeah, it was deep. I mean, quite honestly.
So this is why I asked about the disclosure question, because we find that we have such sophisticated sonar and everything that we could track all kinds of things. We go in Lake Huron, we find just about everything down there. We can't find this object.
Well, I'm almost sure that the Lake Huron one was a very small hobbyist balloon that was flying. Just by looking at the analysis of the 2 missile shots that they did,
right,
and breaking lock, but it's not deploying any kind of counter missile technology. Flares come out of it. It doesn't do any rapid maneuvering, and then they get a second shot. To me, that looked like a ballistic hit. I don't even think they were able to get enough of a heat transfer between whatever was the surface of this. I don't think that one falls in the same category. It was definitely not the same kind of device that flew the entire part of the United States that was shot down.
All right, then let's look at the Yukon Territory one.
Very interesting. That's the one that picture's supposed to be of.
Correct. Right. So we have looked down satellites, all kinds of spies in the sky and type of that nature, and we can't find this object?
I'm going to say, yeah, Chris, that doesn't surprise me. We can't find it. 2 things may be at play here, though. If it's very simply another balloon technology piece that's there isn't a lot of heat generally on those kinds of things. So once it is broken apart, and comes down into a very cold environment, it's going to cold soak very quick. So you're not going to get any kind of a heat transfer. You're not going to have a reflective heat. And the weather was not great when that happened. I mean, I can't tell you how many times when I finally got the people out of the water, out of a boat, and they said, "Oh yeah, you flew by us 4 times," and there was, 4 sets of eyes, a radar system, and then later on a FLIR system, a forward looking infrared radar, and we still didn't pick up people on there. So that happens. It is the process that how this was released and the game that goes on. And go back to Mr. Alessandro's remark, I really shouldn't be telling you about this. It's a really, really great video. It's 4G, but what we were doing and how we collected it and what was going on, it can never be seen.
Right.
I don't understand why somebody who says they're in the business they're in plays that kind of game and doesn't expect someone like me to get in your face about it. Because if you have just risked someone's life or lives that were involved in that collection, if it's as sensitive as you're saying, because the persons that you were observing now know that you did something.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Commander. And that's why I posed the question to Jim about disclosure.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I was questioning that Chinese balloon, why they let the thing go clear across the U.S. before they shot it down.
Well, I don't think it's the first time that
over land.
I don't think it's the first time that balloon like that went by. And I think if it wasn't because of maybe that one, for the time of year that the rancher in Montana who took out I guess it was an iPhone. I don't know which one he had.
Yeah.
With the super zoom on it, and he got an absolutely, big sky country. He got an absolutely gorgeous picture of it, and then all of a sudden the gig is up. Now,
yeah,
lots of times governments are not going to come out and say, we know that somebody else, we overflew the then Soviet Union. We still do it repeatedly with U-2s and other aircraft. We've got space planes. The Chinese, the PRC has their space plane. There's all kinds of things going on that you sometimes don't bring out. Contentious leading up to an election year, the year before, you don't want to look weak. That's going on. There's a lot of things that can come up why you waited as long as you did. But you mentioned this, Jim, offline to me, and I think you said at the beginning of the show, a lot of times these things happen to track reaction.
Exactly.
To track what's going on.
That's the other thing too. If you observe this for a period of time, as an engineer, you can see the antennas on this thing.
Right.
As an engineer, I can learn a lot about that transmitter based on the antenna it's connected to. I'm going to know its frequency. I'm going to know its directivity. I'm going to know its polarity. And from that, I'd be able to possibly even isolate and backtrack on where it was transmitting to, be it a satellite or a ground station, ship at sea. And that's information you can learn by simply observing the thing. Let it run its course. But it just seems odd to me that they would let it go that as long as they did, unless they did have. Maybe they were observing it, because you can learn a lot about the enemy by what they're doing.
Well, they actually flew a U-2 past it. I don't know if you saw the pictures. It's probably one of the best pictures I've ever seen taken by, and that's no easy airplane to fly. I love U-2 guys and gals. They are that's a demanding airplane from the minute you take it in the air. I've got a couple of good friends that flew them. Tremendous aviators. And he took that selfie, and you can see the shadow of the U-2 going across the balloon. It's an absolutely phenomenally great picture. So. But it's a good question you bring up. Why did we wait? I think there's a geopolitical answer there. Pretty easy. And then, of course, we got into the complete frenzy of anything that was a balloon, anything that we were going to shoot at. So,
Jim, if it's okay, I'd like to pivot a little bit because I'm dying to ask you this question because I don't know a lot about it. But I seen in your library cleansing. And it says, how do you get rid of a ghost? I don't know very much about it, but it is in your library, and I put it down in one of the questions I wanted to ask you. And, the time is starting to run out. So let me ask you about cleansing. Is that something that you know about, or you do it, or do you have somebody that does it? And how do they do it?
I do not get involved in that at all. But I have personal beliefs on cleansing, and I think a lot of that cleansing is, to put it in as diplomatically as possible, cleansing is all in your head. I have to convince you that you have no ghosts. Now, and there again, it becomes a lot. It's not hard to do in some cases if you actually are open-minded enough to look at the evidence. And if you've closed your mind and you're convinced you have a ghost, there's no way you're going to cleanse it, except your belief. Now, your belief is going to let you cleanse it, simply because you believed. I went in there. If I convinced you that I could go in there into your room, stand on my head, and your ghosts will be gone. If I went in the room and stood on my head, your ghosts are gone. If I've convinced you of that.
Right.
So I heard about this smudging and, the sage, burning sage, and that's all garbage, right?
I don't subscribe to that at all.
That's good to know. And the other thing I found in your library was about dreams and messages in dreams. Do you subscribe to that, or is that just something that you don't?
Well, we're into the same area there. The problem with a message in a dream, sure, there may be a message in a dream. I do believe the mind, and I've had this happen to me personally, you'll go to sleep and you'll dream, and you wake up and, hey, I've just resolved the problem of that. But went to sleep worrying about a problem, and maybe a technical issue even.
Yep.
I'll wake up and it's just there. All of a sudden, this is a new way to look at it. It's like the mind is free. It explores different possibilities. And I think the reason that happens is when you're dreaming, you're not confined to your rational thought. The mind is more free to explore various possibilities. And every once in a while, one of them is going to work out.
There was a famous reported, I can't remember the name, but it's the man that created the modern sewing machine. And his claim is that he couldn't solve the mechanics of how you run a sewing machine to have the needle and the thread go through. And
Ellis, wasn't Ellis his name?
I think it might be Ellis. And he claimed that how he came up with the solution was exhausted, went to sleep, and he had a dream that he had been captured by natives, and they threatened to kill him if he didn't come up with his solution. And in this dream, because he was being pressed life or death, it came to him how to make the thread go through and run and do stitches. And that was how he came up with his solution. So I think that has a place. I agree, Jim. I think a lot of it is a mental state that you're in. But I am convinced, I know a lot of people don't believe when I say this, extraterrestrials exist, have been here. There are spiritual entities. There is connections with all of them on that. I just don't think the vast number of cases, and my approach to anything I look at is I always look for the simplest solution, the Occam's razor type approach. Occam's razor's approach there to get to the solution, because when you get down to those cases that you cannot apply laws of physics easily, that defy what goes on there, that is what I find interesting. That's the reason why I think your work is so valuable.
Well, that's the way I do all my investigations that way. If you report something, my first solution is going to be the simplest thing. Did it really happen? Did you dream it or something else? And each time I come up with something, I might make a comment to somebody that says, "Well, I told you that's not right." But the thing is, we're ruling out the simple things, and eventually we're going to reach a point where I'm going to suggest the solution, and you're going to tell me why it can't be the solution. And eventually one of us are going to run out of questions. Either I'm going to run out of points to make, or you're going to run out of rebuttals to it. And when we get down to that point, now we're going to start actually seeing some progress.
So we've got about 5-6 minutes left here, Chris. Let's not run the videos, but let's talk about the two videos.
Do you want me to run one of them?
No, let's not run them. Let's just talk with Jim about them, because I had sent them to Jim ahead of time.
All right, Jim, there was things that Setovan talked about, and the new word out there now is threat. This ufology thing, everybody's talking about it's a threat here, it's a threat there. We got to be careful here, we got to be careful there.
Mm-hmm.
What is your feeling of all the cases you did with UFOs? Do you deem them a threat, or do you have anything that they could be a threat?
There's only, you can't rule out anything, but no, I haven't seen anything to actually call it a threat per se. Yeah.
Do you think they're there to help?
Threat,
Do you think that we have some that are here to help us?
That's a possibility. Since we don't know the exact source of it, we really don't know. Yeah.
You really are balanced on this. You really don't take a commitment unless you see something that really points you one way or the other, and nothing's driven you into one camp or the other.
Right. I'm not pro extraterrestrial. I'm not against extraterrestrial. Is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. You can't tell me with all the number of planets that are out there that nothing could live on any of those planets except Earth. But then the other question comes up too. When you look at the going back to the Drake's equation, go back into the 60s, of whether we have intelligent life on anything, and a short period of time that intelligent life could exist on a planet.
Right.
It's like billions of years. There's just a short period of time, and you're going to have to, if it's an intelligent form of life, it's going to have to be sometime in that period, because otherwise it's either going to run out of resources, blow itself up, or do something.
Right. Excellent point. Last thing is we're driving up towards the end here. So what's your impression? Again, not putting you on the spot, I'll offer my opinion. I don't think our government is being the most forthright with this, that they haven't been really good agents in playing this, and that disinformation, as you said earlier, is a big part on purpose. On the spot, what do you think of that?
I think there's a lot to that. I think in a lot of cases it may be because we haven't determined what a UAP is, whether it's ET or whether it's one of our own. Now, if it's one of our own, it's a military secret. Obviously, you expect a certain level of secrecy about it. On the other hand, if it's ET, they need to be a little bit more forthcoming as to what's out there. We've filed for various things on the Freedom of Information Act, and you get all these redacted statements back and everything else. And even like good examples, the one that Stan works on, the Kecksburg case, we have redacted statements on that or missing data altogether, yet they still want to call it basically a meteor. Now, there's nothing clandestine about a meteor coming in.
No, but the activity sure was. Jim, I'm going to grab you there. Chris, thank you so much for tonight. To the greatest audience on the planet for listening, Genghis Khan and Catholics and Catherine, I saw in the chat room. Thank you very much. And I have a couple other supers I wanted to throw in here. Let's see. Oh yeah, it was Bill or William out of California, and Dean, who had contacted me on email. Thank you so much. The info coming, and I always try to answer back those emails and comments. And to Don and Vicky Ecker, get better, both of you. I hope you're feeling better.
Yep.
And UAP Crossfire, KGR Radio DB. Thank you so much for joining us. See you in a week. Thank you.